It's 5:30. And we do have a quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with Laura. Laura, are you there on the phone?
Yes, I am.
All right. And you hear me okay?
You should have Sheila and Jill too.
On the phone?
Yep.
Sheila, are you on the phone?
No, I haven't, no one's called in other than Laura.
Okay. But we're expecting Sheila and Jill as well.
Okay.
Did we want to move one microphone closer to the phone?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Would that work?
On
Would that
Facebook, I
miss?
think she wants to check the draft.
See. This is, who's on the phone?
Don't,
I have one.
Laura, could you talk Laura, can you talk just a little bit? We're playing with the microphone here. See what you
Yeah, no problem. This work?
try to see Bonnie. Just 1, 2, 3.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. I'm also watching on the Facebook page too, so I know the visuals to go with it.
That's good. I think.
Okay.
I think I just heard myself on Facebook, so I think it works.
Perfect. Mike, are we all set streaming? All right. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. This is a special board of directors meeting with the only agenda item of having a discussion with a ED candidate, Dr. Lisa Mobley. Is that sound coming from the phone? No, okay. We are streaming and recording this. We have to do a roll call because we have remote participants. And I can do the roll call, Sarah, because I can see everyone's here. So we have in the room Dr. Lisa Mobley, Roger Jarrett, Don Capello, Bella Gorman, Zachary Prescott, Maura Webster, myself, Raul Porras. And on the phone, I know Lara Burgess is on the phone. Is there anybody else on the phone? So it's still a quorum, so we can get started. Anything else I need to announce, Sarah, for process perspective? We're not going into executive session. We're not voting today. It's just
no public comment.
No public comment today.
Interview.
Strictly interview. It will be the same case tomorrow, and then we're meeting again in a couple of weeks. So with that, I don't know, Don, if you want to say anything about the process, or we can just get started. And Samini Sampath just walked in the room.
My personal feeling, I know we've talked about the process in a number of our meetings, and I know that the community watching and other board members would love to hear the most from Lisa, so I will be uncharacteristically quiet.
So maybe I'll turn it to Lisa. Any opening comments before we start asking questions to you? You had a long day today.
Had a long day today. I don't even know where to start. I think at the moment my head is scrambling a little bit, so it might take me a few minutes to compose my thoughts. But I'm Lisa Mobley, and obviously I'm a candidate for the executive director position here at AMSA. I'm absolutely honored to be here and to be this far along in your process, because I believe that AMSA's mission and AMSA's core values are the core values that I've held dear to me in my experiences in leadership at the district that I am coming from. I've spent 15 years in one district, and that longevity has given me a lot of experience with building trust and moving initiatives forward as a result of building that trust. So I'll take questions and then maybe follow up at the end if I feel there's something that we didn't get to.
I think a good place to start.
Unknown participant is now joining.
Hi, Sheila.
Unknown participant is now joining.
Hello.
Is that Sheila, or Sheila and only Sheila?
Sheila and Laura.
All right. Jill, are you there? Just check. All right.
Jill is not, she hasn't called in.
Okay. Sorry.
You know, I think anytime a school considers a leadership, well, not considers, but it has a leadership change coming their way, a lot of the questions that I'm hearing and a lot of concerns I hear just are about what to expect from a new leader. What would that person do right away? And if you'd like to sort of just take that as an open question about how you would anticipate your first weeks, months, however, take it in any direction you like, but I'd love to hear about your first days and months at AMSA.
Sure. So I have created a draft entry plan and shared it with the Board of Trustees, and also shared it with some of the other stakeholders that I met with today, whether that be parents or faculty. And I think that that entry plan really communicates strongly that there's 3 phases to entering into a new leadership position, and the first phase, being most important, is leading and learning. And I say leading and learning because the job responsibilities don't stop. I'd love to say that I could spend the first, 3-6 months just learning and asking questions, but there'll be things that, as the executive director, that will fall in my lap as far as either decision making or reporting, accountability. So you have to hit the ground running and be ready to execute some of the decisions that are going to come your way, but at the same time, it's really important to get a sense of the current culture, to get a sense of the priorities that the stakeholders have. What are the priorities of the educators at AMSA? What are the priorities of the students? What are the priorities of the board? How about community members, parents? Everyone really holds an equal spot in communicating what they want to see from me and where they hope that we will go as a team. So I think a lot is listening, also figuring things out, because it's different. A public charter is different than your traditional public school district, and there'll be a learning curve there. But I think that there are a lot of parallels to some of the things that the executive director is responsible for, and even a building principal is responsible for in your typical high school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we talked about, as a board, just sort of going around and just sort of taking the conversation where it goes, so I won't put anyone on the spot, but I can keep going as well.
Sure, I'll take the round going this way then. So, COVID has been a significant challenge for everybody in the U.S. and the world, but so how would you assess and address the gap in education that's been caused by COVID?
That's a fantastic question. First I think I would do, and again, it's also in the entry plan, I would do some data dives. A couple of the folks that I met with today are data specialists that they've been looking at data for a while here at AMSA. The high school principal mentioned that they are creating a data wall, and they're looking to the Panorama program to kind of collect and cull their data and to see where gaps are. So I would absolutely work with the leadership team and work with the teachers to do a data dive and to try to find out where the kids are demonstrating gaps. And then from there, we would just brainstorm, identify things that we might want to try, and research whether or not those interventions have been effective and in what types of classrooms or what types of programs have they been effective, and then implement. I believe strongly in like an action research approach where you have a problem and you brainstorm solutions, you select some interventions, you intervene, and then you collect data.
Unknown
and then you review that
participant
data.
is now joining.
That's okay.
Hi, Jill. She's in it.
Can I talk?
Yeah, you just say hello, that's good.
So then, then after you hit that data review process, then you refine your interventions. Maybe they worked, maybe they worked slightly, maybe they worked terrifically, and you just keep using them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, it looked like Bella was gearing up for
Well,
questions.
I guess I just have a follow-up on that. Are you doing anything at your current school right now, or are there any interventions that have come across your way that you're trying out currently?
So I think currently we've really been working from the student perspective. our teachers were really superstars during COVID, and they did not miss a beat, I will tell you that. And we did some MAPS testing to see how much of an academic gap there is, and we haven't found a huge academic gap. What we have found is a huge social emotional gap, right? So some of the things that we've been implementing really around the social emotional well-being of kids, and we've expanded our affinity grouping at KP so that the students have a place to go, that they feel safe and they can share the stresses that they're under with like peers. This year we have an affinity group called the People of Prosperity. They're for our BIPOC kids. And then within that group, we developed interventions to help the kids that are struggling. So we took our juniors and seniors, and they act as mentors for the 9th and 10th graders. I mean, the juniors and seniors even come to like discipline hearings for the kids to advocate for their kid when something goes wrong. And it's increased students' confidence in talking to us as administrators and allowed us to problem solve better. It's also it's let the kids that are usually marginalized know we care about them, and I think that that's critical. And we have an established culture where when kids see something not going right, they're pretty vocal and they'll come and let us know. We recently had some unfortunate instances in our gender-neutral bathroom, and because of those instances, the bathroom was, let's say, closed. And the kids came to me right away and they said, "This is not okay, Dr. Mobley, we can't do this." And we had to figure out a way to have them open without having them being locations for bad things that happen for kids. And so we shifted our duty schedule to have an adult out and on duty, so that then we didn't have to lock them. And so that kids could access, but they could access one at a time and not multiple in one stall and things like that. So we've been trying to intervene more in the mental health and the social aspect, because that's where we've seen our biggest gaps. Yeah.
So if it's all right, I'd like to build off of that. So the curriculum at AMSA is a very rigorous curriculum, which can, add stress to the students, and social emotional well-being is something that we really want to take care of. What kind of initiatives, supports can you see coming from you for teachers or for students in helping to make sure that we hold students to high expectations while also help them with social emotional health?
So, I think sometimes you have to look at the sources of stress, and I think you have to look at your practices and really evaluate is everything that you're doing necessary? Is it necessary for you as a teacher, and is it necessary for kids? And what I mean by that is we went through a little bit of a phase where we were looking at homework. And homework is important, and kids need it. And you need reinforcement, you need practice. But what kids don't need is busy work. And we really took a deep dive into the homework that we were assigning and the extra projects that we were giving to make sure that it really was trying to get kids to mastery versus, excessive practice that they didn't need when they were already at mastery. And that can vary from kid to kid. And I think that differentiated approach is important. And I think, I have a math teacher that grades every single math problem that she gives out, with an excessive amount of time. And every time grades are due, she's always asking me for an extension. And I always ask her, why are you doing this to yourself? Because I think that she could give feedback by, the class collectively looking at certain problems. And she could decrease her stress and also decrease the stress of the kids by just changing some practices. So you know, that goes back to, but coming in not with a change agenda, but coming in to learn about what's happening here at AMSA, and then being creative and brainstorming and having those conversations with the staff about, well, where do you think the stress points are? Do we need a homework-free vacation? Should we designate one vacation a year as homework-free? I don't know. Some of the teachers would be like, well, absolutely not, especially not the one closest to the AP exams, right? So I've been there, I know that. But you know what, once in a while, it's nice to have that break for the teachers and the kids.
I'm going to break the pattern of questions for a second, give you a little sort of not traditional question. What are 3 things that you would tell us that we should know about them?
3 things. That's close to a question that I ask. I usually ask, what is one misperception about you? 3 things about me. I enjoy crocheting because I think it's really kind of mindless. And I would love to have kids in my office here and teach them how to crochet, because I think that it's good for mental health. I also enjoy being a passenger on my husband's motorcycle. We like to ride, and someday I would like to ride across country, because I also find that there's no electronics, right, when you're on the back of a motorcycle. You're just looking at the beauty of the world, you're feeling wind, and you can think. I used to run, and I did 6 half marathons in a year. But I don't do that anymore. I replaced it with the riding, because it was the same thing. Like, we don't have enough kids that like run or walk or are out there without anything going on in their heads. One other thing, I'm addicted to dogs, and I've had to say no at 3. And I like very different dogs, so I have a German Shepherd, a French Bulldog, and a Lab. And it's hilarious in my house all the time. Zoom calls are really hard because the German Shepherd's really loud.
I feel you on a number of those things. A number of those things. And I do agree that being on the back of a motorcycle is very meditative.
Yes.
Do you have your license?
I don't, and I've been toying with it.
I got mine a couple of years ago.
Did you?
And I don't have a bike yet.
Okay.
I have not used it since I got it, but
you did get it.
Get it.
Good for
it's
you.
super empowering. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, well, he just bought his 2nd bike, so there is one if I needed one.
There you go.
Not out of the question.
So I did get a chance to meet with you this morning, so I appreciate the second opportunity to meet with you. I'm actually going to ask you about your day.
Okay.
What would you say were your key takeaways, including maybe one thing that really surprised you about this school?
Yeah, and I'm just going to throw this in, otherwise I can feel the tickle and the coughing starting. It's my turn.
And just while you're catching up, just for everyone at home, we've had Dr. Mobley here since 7:30 this morning.
Yeah.
The first meeting was in one of our smallest rooms with over a dozen people, and we've kept you busy nonstop. I think we gave you one break. We did feed you, so I felt a little better there. You got to meet with students, parents over Zoom, community council, and then in terms of faculty, you got 2 sessions with teachers, 2 sessions with admin, and I believe department chairs. You sat down with Mrs. Lindsay, and I'm probably forgetting something, but so thank you. That's part of the test, was really if you could make it to 5:30.
Exactly.
So maybe a conversation with Mike. Mr. Nora.
Again,
yes,
it's possible.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
and that was a wonderful experience, actually. So I think that maybe what surprised me, but it shouldn't have, because we're going through a transition as well, and it's the same things. I don't think I expected as much fear from staff as I sensed in the room. And again, that's not something that should have surprised me, because with the transition happening at King Philip, the district that I'm in, I see it in my staff as well, and in our administrative team. So that was, again, a little surprising, but I think it's natural to have with major transitions. Was there a second part of that question?
was just looking for key takeaways.
Key
right?
takeaways,
So
okay.
this is-
I think you have a very, very strong administrative team. I think that they know what they're doing, and they have a great skill set. They seem to be very clear communicators. I think that, you know, your next leader shouldn't be somebody that wants to change what they're doing, but support what they're doing. So that was a key takeaway. I think the staff are very skilled in what in their subject matter. I wonder if...
We've been talking all day.
All
so
day.
Feel free to take a break.
Please take your time.
Yeah, I wonder if they would grow more, maybe without fear around things like metrics, like the test. test scores. So those were the key things I think that I got from meeting with staff today.
Okay. How about anything about the students?
And again, it's because you say the same things over and over again. From the kids, it's the stress level. It's the, you know, they were wondering about, you know, having their own mental health days and what can we do to ensure that they're not as stressed as what they are. And I think a lot of that has to do with test scores as well, and the coach around that. So for them, and the other takeaway from the kids was how not to build a better community in a sense like caring about each other, but how to build a more active community, like more involvement in things, activities, and bringing the towns together so that, you know, no one really knows who's from Marlborough, who's from Hudson, who's from Maynard, who's from Glen. That was another takeaway from the kids that I got.
I'll ask one more question.
Absolutely.
On the floor again. This morning you talked about passion projects. Mm-hmm. And so I was wondering if you could tell the rest of the board what that meant, mm-hmm. and also how you're creating opportunities for those passion projects, and are they, or do they generally become more only student driven? How does the school community support passion projects?
You have to make the question longer.
I should have, yes. Well, I really liked, you talked about zebra whistles and you talked about anxiety and how a student used both of those, or two different students had done work that really got them thinking out of the box. And so I'm just trying to understand, because AMSA does have a lot of innovative internships and other projects that are happening, and I'm trying to understand a little bit more about your approach and what has been successful for you.
So with us, we call it Distinction. It's our Distinction program, and it's for all kids. So you don't have to be in the AP courses or the honors courses to participate in the Distinction projects. You just have to have a passion about something that you want to learn more about. And you know, we saw a lot of this during COVID, when we kind of got the direction from the state that we couldn't really teach and keep moving forward in the early stages. But we were already doing it. And it can be, it really can be as simple as a student realizing that maybe there's a hospital that needs crochet hats for cancer patients, or I had a student that I shared this morning that is in my binder. He was really interested. He wanted to get published, and he wanted to get published in a scientific journal. So he worked with one of the science teachers to conduct an experiment with zebra mussels and measure their affinity to different surfaces. and added something to the surface to see if they still would latch on or not. And I had another student who experienced anxiety herself and felt that she wanted to write a children's book about anxiety, and you can get it on Amazon. It's called Little Ducky, Big Worry. And so she published a children's book on anxiety. These are things that the kids would probably take on no matter what. You know, I have one kid right now, Laksha. He publishes a blog every single week. And that is like a distinction kind of project. And so what we do is we pair them with a teacher advisor who can help them kind of conduct the research to go along with their passion. Because there is a process to it, a literature review, and then, you know, backing it up with that literature review. So it is in addition to, but typically we try to encourage kids to use something that they're kind of already doing, and we just kind of formalize that. And it really helps them when they write their college essay to talk about something that they undertook on their own. So it's been very successful for us at KP. But I will say we had a little bit of a break, and we had an opportunity to go into the science classroom that has all of the donated equipment, and it was fabulous. But what really struck me was on the board, the teacher had this massive board with all the kids' names and these individual projects that he was working on with the kids. And so within one class period, there was 6 or 7 different projects going on. I mean, to me, that's where teaching needs to be. So I was wowed by that. So when it comes back to the question, why AMSA? That's why AMSA, because our kids can Google anything right now. They can regurgitate stuff that we need them to regurgitate. Those aren't life skills. But doing that independent exploration and knowing that your sources are valid and testing something, and those are the real life skills for our kids. And I think we can do it within the school time and not add more. But we can also support some passion things that the kids have outside.
I'm going to give a chance to those on the phone before we run out of time.
Okay.
Also because I've had a chance to meet you this morning and ask questions. So Jill, Sheila, and Laura, is there anything you might want to ask? Can you hear
Hi,
us?
yeah, this is Laura. I do have a question. Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. So Lisa, I was really interested in kind of reading about your experience with the fundraising campaign at King Philip's, which went to build the field. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that experience and how you approached that fundraising initiative, what you found was most successful, what was challenging. I'm sure, as you know, as AMSA tries to build new buildings, fundraising is a big part of that process. So I was really curious to hear a little bit more about your experience with that.
Yeah, it was eye-opening. It was a lot of fun at times, but I will say that it was extremely challenging because, similar to AMSA, the way that KP is set up, we have 3 sending districts that are their own school districts. And so nobody owns KP. Each town owns a part. So we really don't, it's not like when there's a single high school in a single town and everybody's kind of like rah-rah this town. So it was quite challenging. I will say that I had a very good team of people. There were community members that were really, really invested in getting us a turf field. and they networked really well to raise some money for that. I participated by supporting their events, being at their events, being the #1 cheerleader. And I was saying at dinner, there was this one event, there's a group in Rentham called Rentham Community Events, and they hosted a Dancing with the Rentham Stars activity. And so I danced for KP, and that's how we raised most of our money, through the ticket sales and also through the different competitions that we had to get to that event. And we have some business partnerships in Rentham, one with like 1776 Financial, but I think it's being, the most important thing I think is being a visible cheerleader or banner carrier for your school and the why behind it, and what your school district can provide if your goal happens. But I think that the work, I can't take as much credit for that as the team that was around me in working with me in that. Eventually, you know, we met with the different boards of selectmen in the different towns, the different finance committees, and we were able to go to town meeting and essentially ask residents to pledge, I think it was like $1 to $11 on their tax bill for 1 year in order to finish financing the field. And it passed, and that's how we finished the financing for that field.
Any other questions from the phone?
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you. This is Jill.
So I was going to ask you about your 100-day plan, but I think you kind of answered that. But I don't know if you want to give a summary for those that don't have the opportunity to read what you submitted. And, you know, what are the key, you know, broad strokes of what you're thinking already about your first 100 days and AMSA, how those will go, and what do you think is the most important thing that needs to be accomplished?
Yeah, so I think, you know, I think the first...
Unknown participant is now exiting.
I think that, you know, I broke it up, as I said, into like leading and learning, and then leading and analyzing, and then leading and planning. And I think that those are like the 3 key steps that have to occur. As I mentioned earlier, you know, we have to continue the work that the district is doing, but at the same time, you know, I have to learn about the opportunities for growth, people's priorities, where they would like to see AMSA go. I need to have those like one-on-one interviews, focus group interviews. I would want to be visible within the classrooms so that I would have access to the students and they could share with me their dreams about AMSA. I would have to be visible in the community. I had some great conversation at dinner about some of the partnerships that are starting to be developed with the public schools that feed AMSA. I would be interested in meeting representatives from the surrounding towns and, you know, see if there's any opportunities for us to partner or build partnerships. And I think it would be important to really work closely with this board to clearly articulate, you know, 3 goals that the board wants to focus on. And granted, they will be more overarching than the like school improvement type of goals that you find in a school improvement plan. But what your hopes and dreams for AMSA are, that leads how the executive director and then the building leaders formulate the goals and the dreams. It has to be really well articulated, otherwise what you want and what they want, not always the same thing. So I think that, you know, when it comes to building that, and rather than strategic plan, I like to think of it as like a student success story. Building that student success story has to start with some of the work that the executive director does with the board.
Now, I do have a specific question. You mentioned in the phase 1 learning actions, a traveling residency.
Ah, yes, that's my part. I have one of those types of things, and I go in classrooms, and I plant myself there, and I look, and I learn, and I just learn about things. So,
traveling, so we're traveling within campus.
yes, yeah, well, yes and no, though. I think because you represent 4 towns, that's going to also mean, you know, look, we had, what, 5 to 7 parents on the Zoom call, so maybe there's a better place to go here from Clinton parents, or maybe there's a better place to go here from Hudson parents, and traveling like that as well. So within the campus, and then even outside of the campus, who are the key players? I don't know that yet. Who are the stakeholders within the towns? So that could be the part of the traveling residency as well. Yeah.
So a little more nitty-gritty
Yeah.
in terms of executive director work. Can you tell us a little bit about your budgeting experience? I like to hear things about sort of how a budget cycle works, as well as just budget challenges, your experience, and things like that.
So we have a shared budget calendar, and it's in the book that we work on together as an upper admin team, and then we kind of follow the calendar. We do zero-based budgeting, so we start with a 0, and we work with the department heads, and they submit, sometimes it's a wish list, really, but we have a lot of conversations on prioritizing, you know, the wish list, and we also use other tools to drive what happens first. So one of the tools would be the strategic goals of for us, the school committee. Another tool would be the curriculum revision cycle, where, you know, we try to cycle through departments, kind of like a department that's going to cost you a lot of money and a department that's not going to cost you a lot of money. So you don't want to do curriculum revision with science and art at the same time, because they have a lot of consumables, right? So you use these tools, I think, in order to try to not get hit all at once. And, you know, your textbooks, and, you know, textbooks are supposed to be reviewed annually for bias, and, you know, so we start there. We go through all our materials annually, looking for bias, deciding which ones to no longer use, and we build our budget like that. You know, I think that there are opportunities for probably a lot more DESE grants out there for your traditional public school. But a lot of the things I read, charter schools are eligible, and because your catchment area includes more of a little bit of an urban type of district, you might be right to grab some of those, you know, say school grants if you need upgrades to cameras, or there's been a lot of social emotional money out there lately. But that's a little separate from the budgeting process. So after the department heads submit and they prioritize for me, then I kind of go through and prioritize for our finance director. And then he further looks at it, and he cuts things out. Because we're a regional district, we try not to leave money on the table. So if we're getting close to the end of the year and we still have money on the table, we do some pre-buying for materials so that we don't leave the money on the table. The regional school district, money on the table goes into an excess and deficiency fund. It's certified, so you can't use it the next year, you can use it the year after. It's been helpful to have that in some tough budget times, but we don't let that get high because that then hurts our elementaries. And that's why we've ended up having a good relationship with the elementaries, because we haven't been greedy in that kind of area. And we've tried to keep our budget around 4% because, well, because to the towns that means more. So because by enrollment, a 4% KP increase could be up to 8% for a certain town based on their enrollment. So it sounds good at 4%, but the reality of it for the individual town could be 8%, which is high.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sort of a follow-up question to that. How do you, in your budget planning process, how do you handle longer range things, capital investment toward the building or toward buses, or how do you plan that into the budget?
So my only experience with that is as a school committee member, because as the building level principal, that doesn't really fall underneath me. But as a school committee member, we've worked with the superintendent to try to have a capital plan, first of all, to know the ages of everything from, you know, your refrigerator to your air conditioning units, and to try to plan out, you know, scenarios that could happen. We all know that that's just best case scenario. But we work with him on that, the roof, what stage is the roof in, how many years do we have left on the roof, and so we work with that individual to have that kind of capital planning document that lets us know, hey, we're getting close to this, we're getting close to that, so we can project it out for the towns.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Earlier you were just talking about some of your observations, like, you know, about the stress on test scores, and there is a movement, it seems like, even with the colleges, of moving away from standardized SAT scores and that sort of thing. You know, like, how do you see AMSA like changing? You know, we do focus a lot on AP exams, and I still think it's great, but we might have to pivot a little bit. What do you think, you know, a teacher could look like?
I think colleges get to know a school by the students you send them. I think you develop, so when I first got to KP, our kids were not getting into the same schools that they're getting into now. And you know, it's not because they scored a 5 on a AP Calc. It really is because they understand the level of rigor that KP brings to the table. So that's beneficial for kids. It's a great marketing type of comment or approach. Personally, I've seen colleges move away from particularly the SATs. I have a junior in college and a freshman in college, and all except one school that my freshman applied to was test optional, and one of its schools was like, we don't submit it at all. So the landscape is changing, and colleges are recognizing that that number is a snapshot in time, and that the skills that a kid brings to the table predicts their success much more. If they see well-rounded kids, they know that they'll have a kid that's going to make it through the stress of a 4-year college. If they, you know, see a kid, sometimes if they see a kid with too many APs, they worry because they have statistics as well. When they have, you know, we know that WPI last year, the number of suicides that they had, right? That's not what they want to create on their campus. So we don't want to get kids in that mode at this level, because they're not going to want to accept kids unless they know that kids have life skills to kind of make it through. But it's educating families, it's bringing some of these college admissions people in to educate the kids, because they don't believe you when you say you really don't need 7 APs, or if you really want to take that class, you don't need to take 4 years of a world language. You can take 3. You can balance things out. And it doesn't mean that one subject area is more important than another. It means what that child needs is more important. And that can look very different for each kid.
Pulling on what Bella asked about with how colleges, or you build relationships with the colleges, trying to get a better sense of what do you think helped in your case when you said the colleges know how rigorous KP is. What does that mean, and what did you see, and what do you think the school has built on in your watch to help with that, to see that difference? And could you give us an example of what kind of delta we're looking at?
And so I think, honestly, it's been our AP for all approach to things. But we've been able to do that because we don't hold teachers accountable for the AP scores and say, like, you know, if you're not averaging a 4 or 5, you're not an effective teacher. So that allows teachers to feel more comfortable taking kids in that want to experiment with that level of curriculum. I know that's not a popular thing to say, or at least I noticed that wasn't a popular thing to say today. I'm okay with that because I really think that exposure to college level work is really what's going to benefit the kids. And so there are certain classes that, you know, unless you're really that math kid, you're not going to take. I usually end up having I usually end up having about 3 sections of AP Calculus AB. And there are some kids that just won't take it. The pacing, they won't take it. But they are very capable of college level calculus. So we recently developed a partnership with Middlesex Community College to teach college level calculus to the kids. And our teachers teach it, and it's minimal cost to families. It's $330 for 3 college credits from Middlesex. So the kids that leave my AP Calculus course with scores of 4s and 5s get credit from different schools or get exempted out of Calc 1, things like that. But now my kids for standard level calculus are walking into college with 3 college credits. So early college is the next thing. It really is to ensure that our kids are continuing to move forward. So I think AP for all, expanding early college, really kind of put us on the map for that.
Can you say more about early college?
Yeah, well, so our model is what we call concurrent college. So our teachers are teaching the college courses as representatives of the college. So they have to submit their curriculum, their resume, and they have to submit syllabi to the college, and the college approves them and partners them with a mentor. And then they deliver the curriculum to the kids, and they earn college credits. There's other models of early college that are, online courses, but kids are not that great with the online courses. It's not my favorite. And then so we have some courses that are embedded, and those are courses like your AP government curriculum matches perfectly with an American government course. So we call them embedded. And so students have the option of opting to pay the $330 and get the college credit, or they can pay the $89 and take the AP test, or we don't force kids to take the AP test at KP. You can take an AP course, get AP credit, but you don't have to take the exam now. I want to say 99% of the kids take the exam. But, there's some kids, again, they know they're going to score 2, but yet they walk away with a college experience. And to me, that is more valuable than saying, no, you needed to have an 89 average. And again, I realize that that's probably going to be an unpopular approach. And I say that because when I first started at KP, there were all of these hoops that kids had to jump through to get access to these advanced courses. And if you came and you visited and you asked the teachers, has it hurt what we do? Now, 11 years later, they're gonna say, no, it's much better. Our classrooms are more diverse. We get much better conversation. We get much better collaboration, and kids are learning from each other. So it's a mindset shift. It's a tough one to make, but you know, I think it's the right approach for kids. I really do. You're welcome.
I have one more question.
Go for it.
I've been doing a lot of reading, about like plagiarism and AI, and I'm just wondering like what you think an approach would be in the future for any school.
That got quite a reaction when you met with the students today, because I think you brought it up.
I brought it up, yeah. So, you know, we've been talking about that, and again, it's a shift in teaching. So, if you give a kid a prompt, right, they can put it in and get the answer. So, what about giving the kid the answer and having them create the questions? Chat AI can't do that for you. So, we have to evolve our teaching because the technology is evolving, and you know, there's no one better at figuring out ways to beat the system than kids. They're unbelievable, which is not a bad thing. You know, and again, you know, take world language, right? It's in a sense, it's project-based. You know, they can't spit something into a computer and say, okay, this is me speaking, right? So, like, we have to get our other courses to that, where kids are demonstrating mastery versus just spitting something out. And that was one of the reasons why we shifted from having midterms, because all that was a regurgitation of material for 10% of your grade. And it helped some kids because they were really good at memorizing. It hurt other kids because they really weren't good at memorizing, and they spent hours and hours and hours trying to memorize. That's not gonna make them a good engineer. That's not going to make them even a good creative writer. So teaching doesn't shift as quickly as technology, but I think that a district that wants to stay ahead of the game has to continually have those conversations.
Sort of a follow-up to that, because a lot of what we hear as board members and some of the things you referenced are that education will change. And is it next year, 5 years, 10 years? But we've always got to be looking at that. Circling sort of back to the beginning, how would you as a leader go about affecting that change to create the buy-in and not be a top-down manager? Because I don't get the sense you are. But I'd love to hear, you know, you're not going to have all the answers, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But how would you go about, you know, affecting change and working with our teams?
And can I, before you answer, can I add something to that? No, and I do want to add a comment to the question.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Which is, I do believe, from my experience in the board, I've been on the board for 5 years, I joined in a good time where things were improving climate-wise and as far as the community. And I give a lot of credit to Dr. Lewis and Ms. Lindsay for what they did. And in my opinion, part of the secret sauce of what they did was that pretty much every decision, every discussion was a collaborative one.
Yes.
There were teams formed. Every time we had a challenge with the schedules. We had the schedule Avengers.
Right.
We have a challenge with DEI. We form a DEI group led by the teachers and whatnot. So, and that has, you know, of course, not everything's easy, but everything is more easier to get adopted, and everybody has a, you know, our values were not just determined by this board.
Right.
It was something that was done as a whole in the community as a whole. So I think part of our secret sauce, I'm going to be as audacious to make a statement about our secret sauce, which is that we all do things together and we'll in this together. So part of that question is, how do you maintain that?
Yeah.
And I'm curious if I know I'm very curious about your concern-based adoption model, which is thing we talked about earlier today and before about your dissertation, but anyway, that's part of it. That's part of what's behind that question.
Right. So I think it's, you kind of continue those same kind of practices. So whenever we've decided to implement something new, something that was probably scary. I mean, when you ask a group of teachers to go create a learning experience about some aspect of their content that's fun for them, fun for the kids, and measures one of our vision of the graduate skills, they're all like, what? Right? So, you know, I start with the department heads. And I guess it would depend on the initiative whether you would create a different type of advisory group or you'd go to your department heads or things like that. But it has to come, it has to come, everything has to come from a group of people that buy in and feel safe trying things and feel safe taking risks to do so. And so I think, you know, having groups that share ideas on a regular basis is a fundamental role of the executive director. Whether it's a student advisory group or a faculty council or your school-based parent council, that's where a lot of the time has to be spent to get ideas, to share ideas maybe that I have, like what do you think of, in order to implement. Because the whole idea with the concerns-based adoption model is to say, hey, here's a really great idea. What are your concerns? How can this fail? What are you afraid of? And are those fears rational or irrational? You know, are you afraid that if you try this and it fails, you're gonna get fired? Or do you feel safe? Or do you think some parents are gonna come at you because it's, I don't know, too radical, too inclusive, not inclusive enough, or whatever the reason may be? What are your fears? And let's process through those fears. And I think culture creates an environment for people to take risks, whether it's kids in a classroom or whether it's the adults in the building. And the other thing is, I think there are some practices that schools can implement that create like a creative juice flow. So one thing that we have done almost every year is we have what's called a pineapple calendar. And so the pineapple calendar is just a Google calendar, and teachers can post lessons on the pineapple calendar that they feel safe having anybody come and watch. And that means, you know, another teacher can ask to go watch it, an administrator, it could be a district office personnel that can come in and watch that lesson because it's there and they're saying, I feel good about this and I want feedback on this. That really breeds a sense of collaboration and a sense of safety. So I think things like that, so if we're gonna pilot something, that's the other thing. I think the best word on the face of the earth is pilot. We're trying this. This is not written in stone, and we could fall flat on our face, so this could be the most wonderful thing in the world. And if you really hate it, and that's what I had told my teachers about the ALEs, if you really, really, really hate it after we do this, I promise I won't make you do it again. And, you know, did 100% want to do it again? No. No. But we were at a good 90% of the teachers gave feedback that they wanted to do it again. And if you're at 90%, you've got buy-in. And then sometimes you have to move others along. Teachers are innovators. If you give them the opportunity, they want to try things. If they think they're just being measured, they're scared.
Just in the interest of time, I know we're
Wow.
right about time right now. We should have appointed a timekeeper. Yeah. Any questions for us?
No, you know, I think one question that I think probably the public would ask, and the teachers eloquently asked this of me, is, you know, why am I not applying for the superintendent position at King Philip Regional? And that's a fair question. And first and foremost, a colleague of mine, the assistant superintendent, was applying for the position. She hired me as her assistant principal. She helped me grow. She taught me so much, and I have a lot of admiration and respect for her. And quite honestly, if she had moved forward in the process, I absolutely would have applied to be her assistant superintendent. But I think it's often easier to make some of the more immediate important shifts that have to happen because the teachers need it or the kids need it, being an outsider. And I didn't feel like, I felt like staying as the principal, I could continue to grow and do what's best for kids better than applying for that position within that district. And again, if things had shaken out in a way that allowed me to work closely again with the assistant superintendent, I absolutely would have taken that opportunity. So that's my why not. You got the why at AMSA, and now that's the why not.
Thank you. Good clarification. Any last thoughts, board members? John, just had a clarification. We funneling all feedback from the board to you?
Yes.
To avoid any open meeting issues and...
That sounds great.
Just like every other stakeholder,
Yes.
You know, if anybody listening and you know, that participated or that's gonna watch the recordings later, John Tarvin, and make sure I get your email correctly, jtarvin@eostransitions.com, to centralize all feedback about both candidates after tomorrow.
And then, follow on the process question, so all of us, what are the next steps?
Yeah.
That all this feedback has gone to John, and then what are the next steps following that?
So we have another full day tomorrow with our other candidate, and we're gonna have a similar meeting tomorrow. At the end of that meeting, there's only one additional item on the agenda where I'm actually gonna walk through the process to remind ourselves of everything we did to reach this point, which I think it's a worthwhile clarification as we wrap up the process. And we're not voting tomorrow. There's not gonna be any deliberation, it's just gonna be a review of the process. And then we're going on a break. And then right now, March 2nd is what we have that meeting posted. Can everybody that's here is available for that meeting, March 2nd? More,
I'm gonna work on some.
All right, Maura's working on it, so at least just show of hands, sounds like March 2nd, it's a good, we're gonna keep that time. That is when it's a special board meeting. And that is what we'll deliberate, discuss our feedback in an open meeting, and make a decision. But as far as feedback, collecting feedback, the other reason for delaying that for 2 weeks is so everybody that had an opportunity to meet both candidates, both today and tomorrow, will have time to reach out to the board via John or directly to the board, you know, with your feedback, so we can represent everybody's perspective as we're supposed to and expected.
I look forward to hearing back from you, and I wish you well in this important decision because fit is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the most important decision we're going to make this year.
Yes, it is.
So thank you very much for bearing with us for a very long day, I'm sure. And
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
All right.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn? Do we need to make a roll call for it?
Technically, we need a roll call vote for it because we have.
All right, we need to make a roll call vote to adjourn. I made the motion.
Second.
Seconded by Bella.
Sorry.
And Sarah always keeps us on track with this. Do you want to call the roll, Sarah?
Wait a minute, please.
Yeah. Take your time.
Yes, okay. Okay, so who was the one who made the motion?
I motioned, Bella second.
Bella? Okay. All right, so I'll put forward.
Do you want to
All
call?
right, Bella Gorman.
Yes.
Don Capello.
Yes.
Jill Schaefer is not here.
Yes.
Oh, you are? Good. Yay.
Yes.
Okay. Laura Burgess.
Yes.
Oh, you're
She's
good.
must have been-
Laura Webster.
Yes.
Raul Forrest.
Yes.
Roger Garrett.
Yes.
Sheila Kelly.
She's off.
We lost one.
She's
I think
one.
it may have been Sheila.
Okay.
She's the one that.
Sami Sempa.
Yes.
Zachary Prescott.
Yes.
And Hamill is not here. Okay, so it is
All right.
motion passed.
Close. Have a good night.
Thank you.